Well, hello there, guys. How the heck are you doing? Welcome back to Rule of Two Review. So, very exciting day. I am going to be conducting what I told everyone on Twitter a few days ago, my Nintendo Switch Q&A. A couple of days ago, like I mentioned, I did put the call out, as I like to do every once in a while on Twitter and on Facebook, for everyone to send me questions they want me to answer and discuss about the Nintendo Switch. Obviously, this is going to be primarily opinion-based and, speculation based on my part. There are no facts. I don't work in the video game industry, so I don't have inside information. And even if I did, that stuff is usually on lock and key anyway, so I wouldn't probably be able to share it. That doesn't mean it's not fun to talk about. It's not fun to speculate. We're just a couple of weeks away from Nintendo's January event, which I discussed in my last video as well. Really exciting time. It's always exciting when there's new consoles coming out, and it's especially exciting when it's Nintendo with a new console coming out, as you've heard me say a couple of times as well. So I have a pretty exciting handful of some pretty good questions from you guys. A lot of new people asking questions today, so that's super exciting. I did my best to get to as many as I could, like I said, pretty much on every video. I didn't want to leave anyone out, but inevitably that does happen, so keep an eye out for the next time that I put a call out for questions for a Q&A from you guys, because I do want to answer questions from as many people as possible. So we'll go ahead and get started on what you guys wanted to ask me about the Nintendo Switch. We're going to start off with a bunch of Twitter questions, and we'll end with a handful of Facebook questions. So let's get it started. And today's first question comes from my good buddy and fellow podcaster with me every Monday, Robert from the channel Gaming With Me. What's up, my homie? He asks me an interesting question. He says, how mad would you be if Metroid skipped the Switch? Well, I'd be furious. You cheeky bastard. Of course you asked me this question, which was going to destroy my heart and soul just to imagine. Metroid has had a kind of turbulent last many years. It skipped the N64 entirely, which was not Nintendo's plan. Then they came back and forth with my favorite game of all time, Metroid Prime, which kicked off an excellent trilogy of 3 wonderful games and a couple of pretty cool spin-off games as well in the handhelds. And then, of course, it ended up skipping the Wii U altogether. They did, of course, release Other M on the Wii, which, yes, I do very much enjoy. It is not the best Metroid game, but I am very vocal and proud to say I still think it's a pretty damn great game. I have a lot of fun with it. There's a lot of great Metroid and Samus lore there, and some pretty neat, if not simple, action. So I would love to see them return to that formula and improve upon it in the many ways it needs improving upon for a future game. Maybe go back to first person. 2D, of course, would just be spectacular. But, like I was saying, it did end up skipping the Wii U altogether, which is tragic. But I do think that the Wii U's early failure made Nintendo, as I said before, course correct and have to take a lot of projects they probably initially wanted to release on the Wii U and have to move them to their then next system, the NX, which of course we now know is the Switch. So I feel like a lot of the projects and games that we didn't get on the Wii U that we expected, such as like a Galaxy 3 or Sunshine 2 kind of Mario game, a Metroid game, a true Animal Crossing game, maybe F-Zero, all these other things, I do think a lot of those are probably going to end up on the Switch. So, if I was a betting man, I'm going to put a lot of money down on the fact that I do believe Metroid is coming for the Switch. I said many times, I think they're making it right now. I really, really do. But it's certainly not impossible for Metroid to skip a system, as I've said before. It skipped the 64, and it skipped the Wii U. So, could it skip the Switch? It could, but it probably won't. And if it does, Robert, I'm coming for you. Next up, we have a question from the GOAT at CEO of Greatness on Twitter. Really awesome dude. Been interacting with him quite a bit the last couple of weeks. I can't say I approve of his taste in football teams, but that's okay. We put that stuff aside when we talk about Nintendo and video games. So we're on level playing field here. Thank you so much for your question today, buddy. And he asks me, do you think the Switch needs to have multimedia functions to be successful, i.e. YouTube, music player, Hulu movies, etc.? So, interesting question. No, I don't think it needs it. I don't think any true, successful, and well-made video game console needs those things. We do live in a culture where they're expected and they are standard nowadays, and that is fine. To a certain degree, a lot of that stuff is great. I certainly use them. I'd be lying if I didn't say that my girlfriend and I use all 3 of our consoles for YouTube and Netflix all the time. And then, of course, my PS4 and my Xbox One I use for Blu-rays and for movies. So absolutely, we use those functions all of the time, and I love that they exist. However, if Nintendo with the Switch, or really any video game console, but if the Switch comes out and had none of those things, but was an absolutely spectacular video gaming machine, I would be satisfied. B, I think it would impact people's initial impression of the system, and it might become a buzz headline of negative news. Switch doesn't let you stream Netflix and YouTube and Hulu. And like, people would be like, oh, well, that's just lame, and now I'm not interested. I think that would be a shame because people shouldn't really want or need those things out of a video game machine. There's a million other ways to use those applications. But I do think that if the system was great, if it sold for the right price, that didn't make people feel like the value was lost because of not having Netflix and YouTube, and if the games were awesome, and if that controller and that portable aspect of the Switch really delivers on the promise, I do think absolutely it could still be successful. Again, we have to acknowledge the fact that I think it would potentially impact other people's perception and willingness to buy it. Yes, that is definitely true, which is why it's a really good question. People don't think about that, but a lot of the gamers and the purchasing consumer would see that as a drawback to not have those things. I myself don't care. I don't think people should care, but they do and they will. Luckily, I feel like, especially because it's a portable, and we assume that that's a touchscreen. I think that was confirmed, maybe not. And if it really is a touchscreen, they're going to have those apps. So we can only hope. And I would like them to have the apps. I don't need it or require it, and I won't be sad if they're not there. But I certainly would like to see those things present. It will be interesting to see. Coming up next on Twitter is TIP at TI Positron, which I actually know that he goes by The Introverted Positron, which is one of my favorite names ever. So what's up, buddy? He asks me a very simple question. What unknown features do you think the Switch has? That's a tough question. I would say the number one thing that jumps to mind that Nintendo has yet to reveal that I absolutely believe is part of the Switch is that mobile integration you've heard me mention so many times, where I think that part of what Nintendo did when they partnered with DNA a couple of years ago is had DNA start to build some sort of mobile infrastructure that will work with the Switch, with your smartphone and your tablets and your computers and all this stuff. I feel like Nintendo's going to have this kind of hive mind infrastructure built around maybe cell phone or mobile technology, potentially even some sort of data plan that can work with the Switch. Because some people talk about, well, it's great that this thing gives you so many games that could potentially be mobile, like a Skyrim or what have you. But what about a game like Destiny? If we wanted a Destiny on the Switch, and it's like, well, that game revolves around always being online and interacting with other people, that becomes an experience that you couldn't take portable. So does that mean that game or games like it won't show up on the Switch, which is an excellent point. But my belief in Nintendo's mobile strategy that I think could potentially impact the Switch in a positive way could potentially present the possibility for a mobile network, whether it's a data plan or something completely different, or just connecting to Wi-Fi, allows you to still play online with your Switch out in the wild. So you don't have to necessarily run into people who have Switches and everyone pulls their Switches out and just plays together, which is awesome that you can do that. But imagine if you could literally just sit down and get online and play like a Call of Duty online or a Destiny online or even Mario Kart or Smash or whatever else, Splatoon. I think that that's going to be a huge focus to the Switch. If it isn't, I'm really confused on what else Nintendo is planning with the mobile side, and I think it would be a missed opportunity because I think Nintendo has this really great potential to snatch up this mobile market with whatever they're doing with DNA and all these mobile apps they're going to be releasing to really do some really excellent, wild, and crazy things that could be successful and better for the gamer. And so I would hope that this is something that it's going to have. Beyond that, I don't know what other features it might have. I mean, depending on what the OS allows you to do. Is there a better version of Miiverse? That's something I've been wanting for a while because I think Miiverse is a great concept and most people love it. I feel like it needs a couple of tweaks to make me really excited and invested in it as somebody who spends way too much time on social media. The last thing I need is another social media thing to deal with. But if they improve it the right way, it could be something I get into and a lot of people get into. So it's tough. There could be so many different features, man. And I can't really guess anything else but that mobile thing. To me, that's the biggest thing. Mobile, I think, in some way is going to play a huge part in the Switch. Up next, from SNES is the best at Just Threes. Awesome name, by the way. SNES is the best. SNES is the best. SNES is the best asks me, what is the third-party game you are most hoping for to be on the Switch? Well, my main answer for this is kind of a two-parter, because my true answer is Beyond Good and Evil 2. But that's a two-parter because not only do I want that game to be on the Switch, I want that game to be real. Is that a real game? All of the signs are starting to point to, yes, it's finally on its way, it's finally coming. After years and years of waiting and teasing and interviews and E3s and and trailer reveals and leaked footage and all of this stuff, rumors upon rumors about Beyond Good and Evil 2, it feels more real now than it ever has because of all the recent stuff coming from Michel Ancel and Ubisoft. Nothing has been a confirmation, so some people talk about it like the game is real, and I want to believe, but I can't believe until I actually see the thing. And I've said it many times, I don't actually care what console it comes out on. I'm happy to get it. That's why I have all 3 consoles and a PC so I can play it wherever it releases. But I would love it to be on the Switch, whether it was exclusive or not. Exclusive would be great, but just bring the game out. Put that on the Switch. That's my number 1 most wanted game, period. Well, besides Metroid, my number 1 most wanted game, period. As far as something else that maybe we know is a real game, I feel like as far as stuff in the immediate future that I know is a real game and that could be possible, I would probably say Resident Evil 7 because I'm a huge Resident Evil fan and I'm very excited for 7. I don't love that it's in first person, but the demo has been fantastic. What I'm starting to see from it now is that they really have worked on the story aspect, and I don't think it's going to be this short 5-hour thing that's just an excuse for VR like I was worried about at first. And I know that there's an Umbrella connection, which I've shown in my Let's Play with my girlfriend, and a lot of people have seen from that helicopter photo online in the demo. So I love that that seems to be a part of it. So I can't wait for the frickin' game. I'm definitely picking it up January 24th, but I would love to know it came on the Switch. That's just a game and a series I want back on Nintendo's platforms. I think it could potentially do well. Other than that, like, Final Fantasy and Call of Duty and stuff would be great. I gotta tell you, I'm dying to play Final Fantasy. It's one of the games I've decided to kind of skip and wait on for now, and maybe pick up after the new year because I'm too overloaded with games. And I gotta tell you, if I got confirmation that Final Fantasy 15 was going to come out for the launch period of the Switch, that would be so exciting for me because I'd be like, okay, that's going to be a game, a third-party launch game that I would pick up on my Switch. I already plan to go back and pick it up after the new year anyway. If I know it's going to come out on the Switch, screw it. I'll just wait and pick it up on that. So it's a reason to support that game on a Nintendo console. So those are my main answers. What it really comes down to, man, is Beyond Good and Evil 2. Coming up next is from the Charizard King at Pokemadness 1996, a very active participant on Rule of Two Review. He or she asks me, any predictions for Switch holiday releases? So this goes back to a theory that I've talked about a couple of times based on the rumors about if Zelda might not be a launch title, but potentially in its place, that new 3D Mario game might be a launch title. And that's really exciting to think about, that we'd get one of those games. I still think it's going to be Zelda until Nintendo tells us otherwise, which may happen, but right now, my gut feeling says it's Zelda and that Mario won't be a launch title. That the game that isn't a launch title of those two could certainly be a summer release around E3 time, and I think that would be very fantastic and very smart. However, realistically, you'd have to think that the game that doesn't launch with the Switch will be the big holiday game, because there's no better holiday landmark title for Nintendo every holiday than Zelda or Mario, a brand new Zelda or a brand new Mario. So if they could make it one of those two, I feel like that's going to be the main thing. Terminator Juice, who I do the podcast with, he runs the podcast I'm on every Monday. He's really turned me on to the idea of believing that Splatoon, the true sequel to Splatoon, not a port or whatever might be happening there, but an actual Splatoon 2 would be a first year release from Nintendo. And I'm not totally sold, but I'm believing it more and more as the days go on. So I'm not going to totally rule that out. It actually feels pretty good that might happen, to be fair, and to give Juice some credit there. That might be a big holiday title, is the sequel to Splatoon. I hope it wouldn't be a port. I just want a new one, and I really want to feel like what we saw in the Switch reveal trailer was a new Splatoon. I've been saying that since it came out. I think it is a sequel, not a port, but you don't know with Nintendo, man. And these rumors are all over the place, so it's tough to know what to actually believe. But I feel like that's it, the new Pikmin game, if there really is a Pikmin console game, I think that would be a great one for holiday, because we don't want Nintendo blowing their load in the first year, so I don't think we're going to get Animal Crossing and Metroid and F-Zero and stuff just in this first year by holiday, but we're going to get either that Zelda or Mario title, probably the Pikmin game, maybe Splatoon. So those are kind of my main holiday predictions for the first year of the Switch. One of my favorite people to talk to on Rule of Two Review, Traykov540 at Traykov540 on Twitter, asks me again. I've featured a question from Traykov in almost every video I've done. So really good questions, man. Thank you so much. Man, or female. I don't know if you're male or female. So anyway, Traykov asks me, do you think Nintendo will make different upgraded versions of the Switch, similar to the PS4 Pro and Scorpio? I hate what my answer is to this, because my answer is yes. I do think that that's entirely possible, maybe even likely. I feel like the plane has been broken for this to happen now, and 2 out of the 3 console manufacturers in the industry have now. One of them has already done it. The other one has confirmed that their version is on the way. Well, I guess the 1S kind of counts. I mean, slim versions of consoles aren't necessarily upgraded versions, despite the fact that they make some improvements, like, cooling fans and stuff on the 360 and the PS3. The Wii even had the Wii Mini. But actual upgrades, which is what the Pro qualifies as, and what we know the Scorpio is going to be, we now know that this is happening. 2/3 of the console market is bought into this. With the Switch coming out, a lot of questions about the system's power and capabilities are still coming out until Nintendo finally shows us what it's like and we get our hands on it. And due to those 2 factors, I feel like it's entirely possible that Nintendo is willing to do the same thing in a couple of years. And what's even worse is that just based on today's video game industry, which I don't love this fact, but let's be realistic about the industry we live in. Based on that, I think they almost should consider doing that. There's been talk, a really great theory I heard. Nia, the video gamer, is the first one I heard talk about this, I think on Facebook or something a couple months ago, so credit to her. Well, not a couple of months ago, within the first week or 2 of the Switch reveal. And credit to Nia for this. She mentioned the idea or shared someone's post about if the Switch could be upgradable in the sense that the tablet controller itself is what Nintendo upgrades every couple of years. So that, if it's $300 for the entire Switch as it launches in March, but then every couple of years for $150 or $200, you can buy a newer tablet, which is in and of itself a more powerful, more capable Switch. But then, of course, if the docking unit does give a lot more power and performance to the Switch, you're always going to get an improvement of whatever the base handheld is able to do when you dock it with that unit. And the unit wouldn't be the thing that's upgrading every year, because that just upgrades what you have in your hand. It's going to be the tablet controller. And that could be a way that Nintendo could sort of get away with doing this. We're used to upgraded phones and tablet devices nowadays anyway. We know that that's something Nintendo is trying to emulate with the Wii U and now the Switch. So I could see them doing this. I don't love that idea, but I could see them doing it. And again, like I said, to really stay competitive in the industry, as much as I hate to admit it, we might be in an era where all the console manufacturers have to consider realistically doing this just because it's how the industry's going. The Blackbird64 at the Blackbird64 on Twitter asks me, how many Switch units do you think will be sold in total? Do you think it could sell more than the Wii? Man, that's a loaded question. So what's interesting is the Switch right now is generating the kind of newness and freshness buzz that the Wii did. So there's a fair comparison to be made there, and I think the question is very relevant for that reason, because when the Wii was being launched and promoted and revealed, everyone was like, what is this? This is the coolest thing. Never seen it. Gotta try it. Gotta own it. Gotta play it. And then it was impossible to find, so everyone and their mom bought it for like 3 years nonstop. It was sold out, and they sold over 100 million units, which is just insane, complete madness. Only the second console in history, I believe, to do so. And the Switch feels like it's got a very similar buzz behind it. It's not quite as palpable or extreme, but it's there. And again, it has the same essence as when the Wii was coming out. So could the lightning in a bottle situation happen for a second time with the Switch? Maybe. I mean, the slightest maybe. It's such a small maybe, I don't even know if we can see it from here. So I just don't want to rule it out because you don't ever know. I mean, that's the whole thing about a lightning in a bottle situation is you're not supposed to see it coming, so it's impossible to predict. That being said, realistically, no. I mean, I don't think it'll be a long time before something else does what the Wii did, to be fair. I think that the Switch, however, is going to be incredibly successful by Nintendo standards and by comparison to the unfortunate yet amazing Wii U. That had such a dismal life cycle as far as sales and commercial success at only 13.5 million units, maybe 14 by the time all is said and done, which I hope it at least crosses that last milestone. That'd be nice. So there's no doubt to me that the Switch is going to be much more popular and successful than that. If I had to predict a final lifetime sales number, it's around 30 million, and that's good. That's not terrible. But, if it also surprised everyone and did even better than we think, I could see it getting upwards of around 60. I think that would be the smash success for the Switch that no one would see coming. Could it do the Wii numbers and cross 100 million? It could if a lot of the right things happen for a long period of time. It's got to be more powerful than we realize. I just have to admit that I think that would make it successful for the larger gaming public, not for me, for the larger gaming public. It's got to be like as powerful as a PS4 or more so that people are like, whoa, this thing is incredible, because people love to buy powerful shit. So it's got to be really powerful, and there has to be an extremely steady stream of games. That's a tongue twister. Extremely steady stream of games for like 3 or 4 years, which means consistent, great first-party games that don't slow down, and a bunch of those marquee third-party titles sporadically peppered throughout every year. People have to say, oh, my Final Fantasies and Call of Duties and BioShocks and Grand Theft Autos and Red Deads, I can buy those on my Switch, and the new Mario, Zelda, Metroid, and whatever, and Mario Kart and all these things. Those things will keep the momentum of the popularity of this thing going, because this thing is going to launch, and no one's going to be able to find them for months. It is going to be crazy. We already know there's rumors about Nintendo manufacturing scarcity, and beyond that, even if they weren't manufacturing scarcity, I also genuinely believe that the first couple of months will be filled with a lot of sales. People are excited for this thing. It looks great. Nintendo's marketing seems much stronger than it's been in a while. I think Nintendo will knock it out of the park. So I think what's going to happen is it's going to launch and sell out like crazy for like 3, 4, 5, 6 months. And that's going to be great. But once we hit that 5th and 6th month, it's going to be up to Nintendo to keep that momentum, or it's going to be Nintendo's game to lose, and that momentum is going to go away, and then the Switch is going to have a rocky uphill battle of ebbs and flows, kind of like the Wii U. And I do think it'll still, no matter what, be more successful than the Wii U, but if we want to get to the 100 million mark you're talking about, it can't ebb and flow. It needs to only flow, no ebbs. On Twitter, Chaz Evansdale at Chaz Evansdale asks me, new Breath of the Wild footage said game and system sold separately. Do you think there is still hope for a Breath of the Wild Switch bundle? Yes, I do. I think that absolutely is possible. Nintendo did really smart, great things with the bundles with the Wii U. I mean, I think Christmas 2015, they had a bundle with Smash Brothers and Splatoon for like $350. That is one of the best console packages I've ever seen in history. And they did a Mario Kart one. Did they do an Animal Crossing? I feel like they did Animal Crossing or some other weird kind of more family-friendly game. Yeah, I don't know. Anyway, they did that with the Wii U, and they did a really, really good job with that, and they definitely sold pretty well, and it showed that Nintendo knew how to package and bundle systems. So I do still think it's possible that Nintendo makes a bundle for Zelda, but it also depends on when the Switch releases and when Zelda releases. If Zelda releases on holiday, I feel like, or, just later in the year even, not at launch, I feel like there's almost more of a chance that there's going to be a bundle. At launch, I don't know that I believe Nintendo will be doing bundles. They might only be doing just straight up Switches are by themselves, all your games are sold separately for the launch period. And then later, as the months go on and people are talking about their Switches and hopefully loving it, and the press is talking about it positively, once a new big game comes out, like a Breath of the Wild, that's a great time to say, oh, now you can buy a Switch and our hottest new game all in the same package. So it depends on the release dates for both the Switch and Zelda, and if they're the same date and if they're not, and all these different things. And while I don't think it's a lock that they have bundles, I do still think, yes, it's very much in the realm of possibility. On Twitter, Spudley, at Spud13Y, which is Spudley basically, asks me, do you consider it more of a console or a handheld? That is a very interesting question. And I think to fully answer that, we A, have to see more about it from Nintendo in January, and B, probably get our hands on it and really understand how we prefer to use it, what it feels like as a console and what it feels like as a handheld on the go, and just kind of determine it based on that. What I would like to feel is that it's more of a console. And in my brain, I still kind of tell myself it's a console that lets me go handheld, and that's really cool. But it's really, right now, if I was to look at it more factually and without my own wishes on it, it kind of is more of a handheld, I feel. And I didn't initially feel that way, but now that it's been a while and we've seen things and thought about it and ruminated about it, and we've all discussed it and we've talked about it on the podcast 100 times, it's not like it doesn't feel like a handheld. It certainly does. I mean, it kind of feels like both. Like I said, I plan on treating it more of a console and leaving it docked most of the time, but who knows? Once I get it, I might want to take it on the go way more often simply because the option's available to me. So it's going to be really interesting to see, but I don't think we have enough information, and we need to get our hands on with it before I think a lot of us can really say whether we feel it's more console or more handheld. Moving to Facebook, question from a pretty good friend of mine here on YouTube who's got some really fun YouTube channels, Brian Haney. What's up, buddy? Thank you so much for asking me a question on the old Facebook. He asks me, it's a pretty detailed question. He says, If the Switch comes out of the gates selling poorly, do you think Nintendo will swallow their pride and price cut the system early on? I'm trying to remember because didn't the 3DS initially suffer from sluggish sales because of a high launch price? So Nintendo eventually dropped the price. And he says he really hopes that the system is popular. Good speculation. I agree. Thank you again so much, Brian, for the question. So it's a really good question because we know that Nintendo isn't really good at doing the price cut thing, and at least not as good as they should be. I feel like they've learned a lot of lessons from the Wii U. We've all discussed that. Nintendo's probably learned lessons from the Wii U. And it's interesting because when you talk about the 3DS, it's almost the opposite of the Wii U. The 3DS struggled with sales, so early on Nintendo dropped the price, which absolutely made a huge impact and made that thing a smash success. So dropping the price made a big difference. It was too high at $250, but that $169 or whatever they dropped it to, that was a perfect sweet spot, and they sold them like crazy. With the Wii U, it struggled out of the gate for the most part, and then they didn't drop the price. They did eventually drop it by $50, to be fair. So they did one drop within that first year. But then there's been plenty of opportunities and times where probably Nintendo, I have to admit, should have dropped the price another 1 or 2 times since then to $250 or maybe even $199 right now, where we know the system is basically dead and the Switch is coming out soon. And they haven't done that. So they've been very stubborn, stuck to their guns, and focused on, as you said, Brian, their pride. With the Switch, will they follow the 3DS model or will they follow the Wii U model? I think that it's pretty likely that they follow the 3DS model, which I think for a lot of people will be good news. I think that if the Switch struggles to catch on early on, which I don't anticipate, by the way, I think it will catch on. But if it struggles, which is possible, let's say it struggles, I think that, yes, they've learned enough from their more recent mistakes that they can't do that again. They can't mess around. Their Switch is like their golden child right now. They have to put everything into making this successful because it's merging their handheld and consoles. Like, they can't fall back on a handheld if the Switch is a failure, because like all of a sudden their handheld and the 3DS and whatever they're doing there is gone, and they don't have that to rely on to make a bank for them. So they can't mess up the Switch. And if there's really bad signs early on, I think they're smart enough to realize, okay, we got to start selling this thing. We have to make it more appealing. We hate to do it, but let's drop the thing by $50 or $100 or whatever it needs to drop at that time to make it more appealing and get people to start purchasing it. Whether or not that happens, who even knows, man? But I have to say, ultimately, yeah, I think that they would consider dropping the price. One of the oldest fellows I can track following and commenting on Rule of 3 Review, going back to the olden days of the channel, my main man, Michael Kelly, who lives down under, I do believe. What is up, Michael? Good to hear from you again, man. I super appreciate the question. He asks me on Facebook, given the current view count of the Switch trailer at 21 million, do you think it has the potential to be more popular than the Wii? So this is really just building on the question that I was asked a few questions ago about if it could sell as much as the Wii. I feel like it has the potential to be received better than the Wii, as in I think that the average gamer, the average Nintendo fan, and the average press outlet that discusses video game content, I think will look more favorably on the Switch than the Wii. So in that respect, I think it will be more popular. But I think you're talking about raw numbers here because you mentioned the 21 million views on the trailer. And do I think it could sell more than the Wii? And I already discussed that. The slightest possibility exists, but really, no, I don't think so. I do think it's going to be a hit. I think it's going to make money for Nintendo, but I don't think it's going to smash those Wii record sales numbers. I just don't see that happening. You have to remember, right now we have the barometer of a YouTube video to kind of monitor how the Switch might be gauging with stuff like a 21 million view count on the video, and that's great. When the Wii came out, that didn't really exist. I mean, yes, YouTube was around, but the culture was so very different. And the internet even wasn't as penetrating at that time as it is nowadays. I mean, this is a 10-year difference. You think back to 2006 YouTube and the internet, and now think to 2016, 2017 YouTube and internet. It's a very different world. So we might have seen similar or even better numbers if in 2006 the YouTube and internet culture was as potent then as it is today. So it's really tough to tell. Obviously, 21 million people is a lot of people. It shows a crazy amount of interest in the Switch. It shows Nintendo's making good decisions with the consoles so far. So it's not like that number doesn't mean anything, but it's tough to say if it means the system could possibly sell more than the Wii did. Okay, just a couple more to go. On Facebook, Dylan Ochoa, hopefully I said your last name right, Dylan. Dylan asks me if the Switch does get GameCube Virtual Console, What games do you think would be essential to launch with it? Well, I have to say, I freaking hope that the GameCube Virtual Console finally becomes a thing. GameCube is probably my second favorite video game console of all time. Maybe number 3. It's like 2 or 3 for sure. Love the system. One of the best libraries. My favorite controller of all time. My favorite game of all time was released on the GameCube. Like, it's the best. I still play it to this day. I still buy games for it to this day. So I think it's time that Nintendo finally gives people what we've been wanting for a long time. GameCube Virtual Console on the Switch would be fantastic. Those games suddenly become portable as well. Oh my god, that becomes so freaking exciting. Now, I do have to say that I don't think there are actually games that are essential to launch with it, because I think whatever hit the GameCube Virtual Console is destined to be, it will be regardless of the games that first show up for it. But I think there are some more ideal games to launch. I think The Wind Waker is a great game to launch with it, and I think Wave Race is a great game to launch with it. Wave Race Blue Storm, which was one of the launch games for the GameCube. One could even say Luigi's Mansion, the other really awesome launch game. I kind of like the idea of Luigi's Mansion coming out later so that it's one of the games people can look forward to. Because when you launch titles for something like a virtual console, I think you have to kind of consider and factor in what games will get people excited right when it launches, but then what are the games people are going to look forward to for your virtual console that they remember playing? Like Smash Brothers is a big one people are going to look forward to. I think Luigi's Mansion, Super Mario Sunshine. But the Metroid Prime games, 1 and 2, both on the GameCube. I do feel for some reason the Wind Waker jumps out at me, and Wave Race Blue Storm. I think that those would be pretty great games to launch with. If you wanted to do another really, really big one, I think Smash also makes a lot of sense. All of the other big games like Resident Evil and whatnot, those can maybe wait. But man, there's going to be so many great games we can look forward to. I mean, think about it. The GameCube Virtual Console, the GameCube itself basically encompasses a huge amount of the 6th generation period, which was an awesome generation. Way better than 7 and 8, in my opinion. And luckily, that was also a time where Nintendo got a very large percentage of the third-party games coming out at that time. So suddenly, games like Time Splitters and whatnot, and I can't even think of any, but so many third-party games that were coming out on the PS2 and Xbox at the time were also coming out on the GameCube. So if we get a GameCube Virtual Console, not only do we get all those great Nintendo games, but we potentially get access to a huge percentage of the 6th generation third-party library, which is very, very exciting, you guys. And I mean, again, those games also become portable with the Switch. So it's incredible what the system has the ability to achieve if handled right. So at the end of the day, forget the games it's going to launch with. Let's just hope that the GameCube Virtual Console actually becomes real. And the final question for today, also coming from Facebook, is an interesting question because it's sort of building on a topic in a video that I've talked about before. So this comes from Ansley Freeman on Facebook. What is up, Ansley? You've actually been pretty active on the Facebook channel, the Facebook page, quite a bit. So I super appreciate that. I'm glad I have a reason to answer your question today and give you a shout out. So Ansley asks me, first off, I don't want this to happen, so this is a nightmare situation for me. Me too. But assuming that the system fails, what do you think the outlook of Nintendo would be for future console releases, or do you think that they would just go software only? Ooh, the dreaded third-party Nintendo question. Would Nintendo ever go third-party? Great question, Ansley. Thank you so much. Again, I did talk about this like a couple months ago, a month or two ago. I kind of made a video about what would happen if the NX, at that time it was still the NX, what would happen if the NX failed? And I discussed the potentially realistic possibility of that might actually be the time where Nintendo would decide to just go third party. And do I still think that's true? A little bit, yeah. I think it's hard to say that if with Nintendo putting all of their chips into the Switch basket, which it seems like they are, because like I said, they're basically removing their golden egg basket of the handheld market, their thing that they can always rely on and count on to kind of keep them afloat. They're removing that and combining that with the Switch in this home console market and making it this one unit. So I think for the time being, that's most of what we're going to get from Nintendo, as well as all the mobile stuff. And with them doing that, suddenly it's like everything rides on the Switch. You know, at least it seems that way. Yes, the mobile stuff will make so much money for them, and Amiibo will probably continue to make money, and the theme park attractions, and if they do movies. But they're still a video game console manufacturer first, and so they need this thing to be successful, guys. Make no mistake about it. Nintendo needs the Switch to be successful. Now, those other revenue streams certainly make it so that if the Switch is another disaster and another bomb like the Wii U, they probably could still suck it up and be like, okay, we gotta do it again. Let's just do it again. But I think that what might also happen is Nintendo really starts to struggle with mindshare more than they ever have before. And people will say, coming off of the Wii U and then the Switch also as a failure, all of these non-Nintendo gamers, I think that would be the last opportunity for them to ever be interested in Nintendo. And that's who Nintendo needs to be as successful as Sony and Microsoft, or even as successful as the Wii was. They need to have non-Nintendo gamers purchasing their product and interested in it. So if the Switch is a failure, I do think it opens the door for them to potentially go software only. I still don't know. I still am like less than 50% on that happening. I have to say, if the Switch was a failure, I would be like 40-60 on that being possible. 40% says it could happen, but the 60% in me, more than half, still says it wouldn't happen. And Nintendo would still find a way to make more hardware. Maybe they go back to the handheld thing completely and dedicate more solely to that, or split the divisions off again and just release another console and a handheld and just try to do what they've always done. I mean, they would certainly be learning a ton of lessons coming off of the Wii U's failures, and then whatever different failures led to the Switch not being successful. They could put all of that information together to hopefully make something really badass again after the Switch, the Switch 2.0 or whatever. But it's one of those things that's impossible to answer. What would make me more scared is if they focused even more on mobile after the Switch would be a failure, and then they do maybe start to feel like more of a mobile company nowadays and not an actual traditional video game company. That is more the nightmare than anything for me, because then we're not actually getting the good Nintendo games. The only silver lining to them becoming a third-party developer is that they still make their games. And so we would still get the new versions of Zelda and Metroid and Mario throughout history. They would just oddly be on other people's consoles. And that would be weird and wrong and just uncomfortable and confusing as fuck. But I have to say, at least the games would still exist, so we could technically play their amazing gameplay. So at the end of the day, it's a tough question to answer. I think I'm just going to stick to my percentages on this. If the Switch is a failure, 40%, I say the door is open for them to go software only, but I'm going to really rely on that overwhelming 60% that says no way would they ever do that, even if the Switch fails. And so there you have it. That's all the questions for today, guys. I had some great questions. You guys had some great stuff for me to talk about today. So thank you so much. I love doing these Q&As. I love doing it revolving around Nintendo. Next time I might just do just a regular old open-ended Q&A where it's just ask me whatever you want about any game, any company, video games, music, movies, whatever. I really like doing those as well, and you guys seem to totally dig that stuff. I love having a chance to talk about movies and music, by the way, guys. But yeah. This is what's up with the Switch, man. A lot of cool mystery, a lot of stuff to speculate about. You've heard my thoughts and a couple of my theories and guesses on what might be happening with the Switch in January and when it launches and all the games. It's just like I said at the beginning of the video, man. It's a really exciting time. I love this time. I savor these moments when we have a huge window of time to know Nintendo is releasing a brand new next generation console soon. Even if it was Sony or Microsoft, I'd be excited. I don't really care much for the Scorpio because it's like just an upgrade to the Xbox One, I think. But it's going to be exciting when the new versions of those consoles come as well, man. It's always a great time. This is what moves the gaming industry forward and games and gamers forward, and it's really fun. And Nintendo always brings it with cool ideas. And even if the ideas aren't great, their games are always great. Look at the Wii U. They failed on some of their ideas, but they still had one of the best libraries of any console I've ever seen. So I know that they're going to kill it with the Switch. I'm very excited for the console. I cannot wait for January. What do you guys think? I answered a bunch of your questions today. What did you think of my responses? Go ahead and share your own ideas and theories and suggestions about what I was asked here today from you guys on the Twitters and the Facebooks. So, thanks, of course, as always, for tuning in, guys. This is Rob of Rule of Two Review, and I will catch you guys all next time on another video.